Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine and I'll be your host today. And we have Chris Nanos joining us. He'll be our speaker. Good morning, Chris. A little bit of household notes. You'll look at the bottom of the screen and you will see a Q&A box. And we want people to ask questions. Please ask your question by clicking on the Q&A box and typing in your question. And I'll keep an eye on them and we'll ask them to Chris, and we're going to try to get to all of them. And so with that, let me introduce Chris Nanos. Chris joined the Sheriff's Department in 1984 as a corrections officer, and then he served as sheriff from August 2015 to 2016. Today he's going to discuss community policing, social justice reform, and down ballot, how your vote matters in the down ballots. And you can find all of his biographical information on the DGT website. And with that, take it away, Chris.
Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you all for being here. I know the priority for today is going to be a lot of what's going on in our world today, and I'll get to some of those things too. But I'd like to first talk to you a little bit about me, both professionally and personally, kind of get you to know where I'm at, where I come from. Professionally, like Larry said, I've been with Pima County since 1984, but actually my law enforcement career started in El Paso, Texas, where I was born. And there's 5 boys and 5 girls in my family. My mom was pretty much a single parent as time went on, and she raised us all. But us boys, 3 of us boys went into law enforcement. I was the first. So I already had about 8 or 9 years of experience in law enforcement as a cop in El Paso. Did a lot of street work and undercover work. And then I met my beautiful wife, Charlene. We've been together for 38 years. And that was probably hard for somebody to anybody would be with this guy for that long, but she's the same. We didn't have children of our own, but we raised Charlene's niece. She came to live with us when she was a first teenager at 13, and it wasn't under good circumstances. She had got herself into meth and a pretty heavy addiction, and that was actually, even though I'd been a cop for 41 years and worked all over the place, it's really my first personal experience of dealing with somebody heavily addicted with narcotics. And to make a long story short there, we were able to get her into care and treatment. And I always said it was the hardest 126 days of my life to get her off of the drugs and to a normal life. And she's just done a beautiful job. She's now 37, 38 years old. She's got 4 or 5 beautiful little kids, and she's put herself to school as a school teacher. I couldn't be more proud.
Chris, let me just suggest the audience is having a hard time hearing you.
Sure.
So the closest you can get to the microphone, the better.
Is this getting better? I hope so. I'm so sorry for that.
Yeah.
Try to speak. Anyway, my family life really is around my wife and our niece who we raised and all of her little ones. But I want to talk to you a little bit about my professional life. 41 years in law enforcement is a lot, and I really did start from the ground floor here in Tucson. I had started as a corrections officer. I worked in that jail, and before I got in that jail, I'd already been a cop in El Paso. I'll tell you what, I quickly learned that is the hardest job I've ever done. And I've done a lot of jobs. I worked narcotics and homicide, sex crimes, child abuse, you name it, internal affairs. I've worked every aspect of this agency, and I have the utmost respect for those young men and women in our jail. We'll talk a little bit more about our jail and its philosophies and where it's at, because I think that's at the heart of some of the things we're going to talk about going on in today's world. As a 41-year veteran of the department, or as a 41-year veteran in law enforcement, I also spent 20 plus years, those years were split up, where 20 plus years was on the street as a cop, doing street work as well as investigative work. But another 20 years, and that's really what's going to be key in this election. I spent 20 years in command positions as an executive police manager. Literally was in charge of substations where you were actually the chief of police for that little mini area that consumed up a lot of Pima County sometimes. For example, the Raycon station where I was a commander, the district encompasses from the Catalina foothills all the way to Santa Rita's, and from Campbell Road all the way east to ready to pass the county line. You were responsible as a commander to everyone in that neighborhood, and so you met with those neighborhood groups and those homeowners associations, and you served them like you would any police agency. But more than that, I grew through the ranks and became involved where I finally made it to captain over the criminal investigations division. And there I became in charge of the Gabby Gifford shooting, which was just horrific, as most of you know. But as the head of that investigation, I quickly learned how bad our mental health systems were and how we needed to do things better. It's not something the sheriff himself could do. It required help from legislative people on big steel, required help from mental health practitioners, required help from the mental health courts, all of these things. But those were things I learned as a manager and worked with and built consensus and collaborative teams to do that. We had a community board, the first mental health community board in the state that included every law enforcement leader in Tucson and in the surrounding areas, Laurel Valley's chiefs, Sarita's chief, Miranda's chief, all of them with all of these teams of doctors and lawyers and judges so that we could collectively meet and discuss some of the problems. And it really hit home when I went to a call one night where we had been there 12 times in the previous year. There was a suicide attempt. It took the 13th attempt, and this man was successful. And that was just really lit me up to say, why are we doing this? There's got to be a better way. We shouldn't have to deal with somebody 13 times to get him the help he needs. And so with this mental health board I created, we also came up with our MISC unit, the Mental Health Strike Team, which is a great team. It was a role model for the nation. It was the first of its kind involving law enforcement and mental health practitioners to team up together on the street and go. There's just so many out there that are in need of mental health needs. I'm probably giving you more than you need here. This is at the heart, too, of what we're going to talk about in our jails and the problems. When I became the sheriff in 2015, I'd never been a sheriff before. I didn't know what the job really was. I had to ask. Clarence Stupid was the sheriff at the time. I asked him, what is the sheriff? What does he do? And there's a lot of things you do as the sheriff. One, you have to provide for public safety. And so we all can think of ways to how do we make our systems better, how do we make our public safer. And I guess I could just drive a patrol car around all over, but we know that's not possible. The real way to do it is to look into your future and say, how do we prevent crime? And to prevent anything, you have to be forward thinking, looking ahead. And so I looked at some of the things that were going on in our community and around the country. And some of those things involve if you just take a look at your jails and your prisons, it's not rocket science. You'll learn real quick who's in there and why are they there. And it's really evident that people in our jails, they lack great education. In fact, it was stunning to me to learn that if you didn't have a high school graduation or education, you dropped out. You stood 7 times greater chance of being in our jails and prisons. That really hit because I thought, well, how hard is it to graduate high school? I did it, and I'm certainly not the brightest kid in the world. I probably wouldn't have. I ditched a lot of classes, probably missed some stuff. So I know that we can get these kids through high school. And so that was kind of a mission for me to start off as the sheriff, was to get with our kids here locally and try to promote them and their needs and get them through high school. Because I thought if we could get them to high school and keep them out of our jails, we would eliminate a lot of crime. keeping our society a better place, making it. So we came up with our school resource officers because I knew that these kids needed mentoring. A lot of them did. They didn't have much of a home life. In fact, there's a number of them that didn't have homes at all. I volunteered for Youth on Their Own, which is a program that deals with homeless kids. I know we think of homeless kids as those on the street, but it's more than that. There's kids that are in foster cares or placed out of foster care. They've gotten to that age, and then at 18, and they have nowhere to go. So Youth on Their Own is a local nonprofit that I'm just amazed at the work they do with these kids. And what really stunned me is there's over 6,000 homeless kids this year alone in Pima County. So there's so much to do and so much to work. And as a sheriff, it's really hard to sink your teeth into all the things at once. So I have to sit back and say, how do I do this job? There's so much going on around me. I got my staff that I need to deal with things with and get them their raises if they need them, take care of their needs like uniforms or equipment. There's just a lot of demands there. So I decided that what I really needed to do was sit back and look and review at what's going on around us. What can we do better? How can we do things better? So it took me to review all of our policies and procedures in those areas that were really important. Areas like training. How do we train our staff? Who does that training? So we took a look at the curriculum. And I know I say I a lot, but it's not me. It really is a team effort. I had some great people in that department. They're still there. Good people, good men and women, who do good work. They made me look like a hero every day. And I did so little. But these people, I would get with them, we'd look at the training curriculums, and we came up with the idea that we needed a guardian mindset, not a warrior mindset. So we based our curriculum on that type of attitude. As the sheriff, you can influence those things that your policies and procedures and practices, but it really takes the team to understand you as the sheriff, how you want to move forward. So it was important to be a part of that team, to meet with them all the time, making yourself available and accessible. And I did that. I constantly was out and about in the community, not just with community members, but my department members as well, wanting to know how can we do things better, how can we do things different. Having said that, one of the biggest challenges I knew already, growing up in an agency, it's any department you have, every agency has various organizations or various corners of the department, the work world, that they know some people are treated better than others. It just is. It's just the way we grow up. I knew that existed at our jail. I knew our jail morale was low. I knew that they felt like they were the bastard children of the department because they've been kind of neglected for years. We would have promotions and different ceremonies, events at the sheriff's building, but never at the corrections facility. And those people are a part of this team as much as the deputies and the civilians. So I made it a point to make them feel included, make them feel involved, make them a part of the team, which meant I went to their facilities office and I went to any other facility of ours, whether it was our dispatchers at 2 in the morning or our deputies out in the street at 10 o'clock at night. I went to our jails with them. And I got to learn some of their struggles and some of the things going on there. Attrition was pretty bad at the time, I think. It was at 4. That means you were losing 4 corrections officers every 2 weeks, 8 a month. So we had to find a handle for that. It wasn't always about pay. You're never going to pay your way out of attrition. It really was about morale. I didn't know you cared. I didn't know you were concerned with taking care of them. Some of the struggles, though, was I couldn't hire enough people. So you had to look at your jail and say, why is my population so huge? Why do I have such a need for so many COs if I have such a population as this? Well, the population at the time was over 2,100 inmates. That's huge. I looked at it and I went in there and I started looking at the people who's there and why they're there. Do you know that at that time, almost 90% of the inmates in there were waiting pre-trial. They weren't convicted of anything. They're just waiting on their sentence. There were people in there that we had a work release work furlough program. It's a great program, a good idea. It came up for my Clarence Duke with a came up with the judges, and it was a great program. It allowed you, if you were arrested for a minor offense, non-violent, you could still keep your job. You'd go to jail, and then in the morning you'd get up, go work, and they'd come back to the jail and go to bed again and do it again the next day. Sounds like a good strategy. Sounds like it's really good. The problem with that is, how safe are you for one? Is it really needed that they keep coming back and forth to jail? If we can trust these 200 inmates, that's what it was, to go out every day and come back, why would we do that? Why would we make them come back? I get it. We want to be, there's all these people, got to be tough on crime, but that's not what we want. We want to be smart on crime. So you have to look at ways to do the same thing, accomplish the same task in a different way. These low-level offenders, possession of marijuana, drug paraphernalia, could have been a pipe, DUI, a lot of low-level, non-violent crimes that were going out every day at 200. And I said, well, that's not keeping the community safe, because I don't have a way of tracking. I don't know that Chris Nanos went to work on Monday at 8 o'clock and came back at 4. He could have done anything for all I know, because we can't track them. So I thought that, technology we knew had already advanced quite a bit in the form of monitoring systems, ankle monitors, electronic monitors. And we looked at these electronic monitors, and they were great systems. They literally had, we had a facility of 40 corrections officers watching these 200. We took that to one correction officer who could watch all of these individuals on the screen. And the screen would say, like, if Chris Nanos' home was at location A, it would route a green line to location B where Chris Nanos was to work. And it would stay green as long as Chris Nanos stayed on that line. And when Chris Nanos was coming back home, and got off the line to go to Circle K to get his home, that officer who was watching the screen saw it turn red, he would call on the phone over the monitor on Chris Nanos' ankle into this middle of the store. He could ask Chris Nanos, "Where are you going, Chris Nanos?" Chris Nanos would say, "Well, I'm buying a soda." "No, get in your car and go home." You see, it really is smarter on crime, because it's also inexpensive, a lot less money. We're paying $100 a day for these units. Do the math. The electronic monitor, $15 a day. We were saving $85 a day on over 200 inmates. That's $6-7 million a year. We know that law enforcement costs a lot, but there's money out there that I think can be saved if we look at better ways to do things. But more importantly than saving money, the real answer here was, why are these people in jail? They're low-level misdemeanors. They're mainly waiting for trial. They have a bond. They did. And they still do today. Today, there was a study done, and Joe Feynman had a lot to do with it. There was a study done last June, 2019. And it showed that, before we get there, I had the population at 2,100, over 2,100. I reduced it because of electronic monitoring and other programs. We got that population down to below 1,600. Better than 20% reduction because of strategies that we employed. Those all went away at the last election. Behavior wanted nothing to do with monitors. And so he dismissed them. There's like 6, 7, maybe 8 guys on monitors today, but that's it. That jail population swelled up to, just before the virus hit us, again over 2,000, almost 2,200. Last summer, Joe Feynman looked at that population, and he said that the numbers were staggering. 70% of those inmates, well, first of all, 80% of inmates that were there were, when I had it was 90%. 80% were on pretrial status. 80%, 70% of those inmates in that jail were charged with possession of some sort of narcotic of less than 2 grams. It's about that much, size of a quarter maybe. Less than 2 grams, 70% of that jail population. That's 1,500 people. almost 1,400 people, I guess. So 53% were less than a gram. Now we're getting down to less than a dime. This is personal use stuff. Addiction, just like mental health, was part of the problem. We have sick people in our jail. People who suffer from mental illness and addiction. And yet, we put them in the worst place we could think of imaginable. A jail is a bad place. It's not a good place. People don't do well there. They don't come out of there rehabilitated. We need to find better ways to solve our problems in society today. That is part of the problem you're seeing today with judicial reform. Our jails, like our prisons, are loaded with disparities of minorities. Our jail today has a population of about, it's like 10, 11% blacks in our jail. 10.6% of it is. Nationally, it's 35 to 40%, depending on the figures you look at. Really, most of them are saying about 36% blacks in our jail. African Americans in our prisons, the same here in Pima County, 11, almost 12%. Population of the black community here in Tucson is 3%, 3.8. The population nationally, we're at 35%, is 12%. Yet they make up 35, almost 40% of the population. There's something wrong there. I get it. Numbers aren't the best key to do things with sometimes. You can always play with them. But those numbers tell a story. They tell a story about why we had protests on the street. I understand George Floyd. We all saw that video. I saw it. It didn't take me but one time to see it and say, that's a homicide. That's a murder. I don't care if those people were cops or regular civilians. They killed that man. They should have been arrested on the spot. They should have been charged. The charges of first-degree murder, homicide, second-degree manslaughter, that's for prosecutors and courts to determine. The sheriff, the police on the street, he just has to say, is there probable cause? There was more than enough probable cause watching that video. And I was stunned to learn that nobody was speaking out, that we were silent. And not we, the people. I'm saying we, law enforcement. Nobody should have been madder. Nobody should have been, I was irate. Nobody should have been more irate than the cops. But this was what somebody in their profession had done to the rest of us. And I was hot, and I know others were hot, but the difference was nobody was speaking up. Chris Nanos, the chief of police of Tucson, a great man. I really admire him. He spoke up. That morning, he went on Twitter and said, this is horrific. This is terrible. I don't know if he called it a murder, but he spoke up and said, this has to stop. Others, communities, our own sheriff, waited 48, almost 3 days before he came up with a written promise that says, this is tragic. And our thoughts and prayers go to the family. That's not enough. Sorry, it's just not enough. I get it. Sometimes we want to be measured in our responses. That's not being measured. That's being calculated. That's watching the political wind, sticking their finger in there and saying, which way is it going? Enough of that. We have a community out here that is hurt, and it's not just our blacks. We have other minorities too, our Hispanics, our gay community, that see things a lot different than you or I do. And I say you and I, in my race. You know, race is really uncomfortable to talk about. I have a problem with it. I didn't realize it. I went to an event at the Rising Star Baptist Church. Amos Lewis and Dr. Holt, Mom Holt, posted it. And it was like a debate forum. And I won't speak to the other candidates. I just know they asked some questions, some tough questions, and I thought I did good. And I came out of there and I went home a couple of days later and watched that debate. And I had to apologize because my answers were not very good. I danced around the issue. It's just really uncomfortable to talk about race. I get that. But we'll never solve these issues if we don't be honest with ourselves. If we can't look internally first and say, wow, there's something wrong with it. We have to be responsible. JFK said, we don't need to look for answers that are Republican answers or Democrat answers. Just need to look for the right answer. It's not easy. I apologize.
Well, Chris, thanks very much for your thoughts there. We've got a bunch of questions, and I want to get right to them.
Please, go ahead.
Pardon?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. You're still a little garbled, so the closer you can get to the mic on your computer, the better. And we have a question from Kurt. Kurt would like to know, what constitutes improper or excessive force in policing operations? And under which circumstances are sheriff's officers criminally liable for the improper use of excessive force? And what are the obligations of other officers to stop and report improper excessive force?
Okay, so let's define excessive force. You know, not the book definition, just the definition that is so basic to everybody. It's that force that goes beyond what is needed to control that certain situation. In other words, if we're fighting, maybe the only amount of force I needed is a wrist lock, take you down to the ground and cuff you up and walk you away. It may be something as simple as you're just not obeying me. So the amount of force I need to do is verbal commands. It could be you're going to hurt somebody. So I need to prevent you from hurting somebody, whether it's me or somebody else. And if you're using deadly force, that force that could cause death, then my response would be deadly force as well, or could be. It's really simply this. It's reasonableness. It's the minimum amount of force needed to control that situation, that environment. When we look at what was going on there at George Floyd, he was handcuffed. There was no need for force. As for the neck and the knee, I don't know. I'm sure there are agencies out there, but our agency never had, and I hope it still doesn't. I'm not a part of that agency, but if it does, I'll ban it. There are no chokeholds. We don't teach that. We don't train in that. That's a technique that really takes some real special skills, and we don't have those abilities to teach to that level. So we just don't believe in those things. I'm sorry. The rest of the question was, what do we do? What's the responsibility of the officers? Pretty simply this: other officers who see behavior, we teach our officers. Again, when I was there, we taught our officers that they needed to show restraint, and they needed to treat people like they themselves would want to be treated. It really is. It's not a rocket science to know and sit back and watch what's going on around you and say that's appropriate and that isn't. And we always told our officers, when you see bad behavior, it's upon you to take corrective action. And some of that action may be intervening right then and there. Some of the action may be, okay, I'm going to tell my supervisor. I'm going to report this incident. We just had an incident recently where the young black boy was at center, and they called for help because he was throwing a tantrum, I guess is all I can say. He kicked over a trash can. He has no arms and no legs. And our officer, for whatever reason, sees the need to restrain him and pin him to the floor. It's a horrible video. And what people don't realize is there was another officer standing there watching this. And after that, they also took that the boy who was actually videotaping, they didn't know he was videotaping, and they cuffed him and they pound his head, they literally push his head into the wall. Those are disturbing things. I don't need 3 or 4 days of looking at video to say that's wrong. You know, our current sheriff, he looked at that video on Wednesday by Foster and did nothing. Went home, went to sleep, got up Thursday, showed it to all of his commanders, did nothing, went home, went to sleep, got up the next day, saw it on Friday. Finally, then it dawns on him that maybe we should put this officer on leave and maybe we should start an investigation. That type of response is exactly the same response we saw with Mr. Floyd. You can't delay certain responses. I know we'd love to have time to make good, sound decisions, but that decision was simple. One, to protect this community from this happening again further, and two, you even protect the officer. Maybe the officer was justified in doing what he did, but you don't want to put him back in that situation again until you've had a chance to review it. So the first thing I'd have done with that is put that officer on leave right then, and we would have started 2 investigations. One criminal, because I think some of the behavior I saw there, pushing a kid who's handcuffed, head into the wall, that could fall into the guidelines of assault. 2, you would also do internal. Was that the behavior you want from your officers? The cussing, the manhandling. I don't think that's the conduct we expect. I understand that there are other things going on, and that sometimes there's things going on beyond the camera. But that's why you hold the investigation. But from what I saw, I didn't even wait for certain decisions. We could have done certain things then, just like now. So it's not rocket science. We teach our people to intervene when they see wrong. No one's above the law. No one is above the law. You commit a crime, I don't care whether you have I do care if you have a badge on, but I don't care who you are or what you think you are. You commit a crime, you're going to have to face the consequences of that crime. It's just that simple. You know, most of our people in the Pima County Sheriff's Department, I don't think people understand this. We are blessed with our department. We have good people. You have 140,000 calls for service every year. It means they respond to any number of things. 140,000. You know, the year I was there, they had 125 complaints. That's pretty remarkable. You take a big business that gets that kind of complaint ratio, they're going to be pretty happy. If you're doing law enforcement work, that's pretty remarkable. So we have some good people. Do they make mistakes? Absolutely. Most of those mistakes are mistakes of the head. We can correct those. But it's a mistake of the heart. That's when you have problems. That's when you have issues. That's when we need to deal with this. For a law enforcement agency to sit back and watch what you saw with Mr. Floyd and not respond to it, shame on them. That law enforcement leader needs to recognize first himself, and then he's the one that drives those attitudes. You know, it really is. Racism nobody was born a racist. It's a learned behavior. And we all, if we're really honest with ourselves, look at ourselves, you'll find some racial biases that you need to overcome. Once you do that, you're on the way to doing things. But that attitude starts at the top, the leadership of the organization, and works its way down, it permeates there. When you see people standing there watching, doing nothing, that's the real concern. That's systemic. There's something cultural there. Now you have to worry about where that came from. I blame the top. That's where it's got to start.
All right. We've got another question for you from Susie. She's attending now, and she says, how much do you want to work with our municipal police groups to form cohesive policies for community policing? Do you have any relationships with the municipal police groups now?
Well, actually, that's an excellent question. You know, we've always talked about metro police force, where you merge I think the largest agency I know that does that is Clark County up in Las Vegas. They have a Clark County sheriff's department that also includes the Las Vegas Police Department. There's one agency, the sheriff kind of leads it over the chief, but there are also two agencies separate because they have their own policies in certain regards. There are things that's good about it. There's some good benefits because you can save a lot of money. You're kind of like your buying power is greater, but more so than that, your policies and guidelines and things can be streamlined for simple things. You get into some political things that are different for the sheriff because he's more rural areas. He's got other obligations to where the chief is obligated to the mayor and council. It gets a little fuzzy, but as far as just working relationships, I always work well with all of our chiefs and all of our sheriffs in the area. I was the vice president of the Sheriff's Association here, just the State Air Association, just like Mark is for here too. But you know, those, I never saw a need to be at a national level talking with national sheriff's organizations if I couldn't handle my own problems in my backyard. We have a lot going on in Pima County. There's a lot of things that the sheriff needs to do here first before he worries about what's going on in Washington. I work closely with all of the chiefs. We met monthly, sometimes quarterly, and just sometimes it was nothing more than a lunch meeting, just to kind of sit down and see each other and talk about our own challenges. So yes, we do a lot of community boards. I created a community board that dealt with mental health. I would definitely create a community board to deal with these specific issues. We should have, TPD does some things very well, and we do some things very well. Other agencies do as well. Those are the things you need to look at and say, could we do better? I look at some of the forms some of the things TPD is doing, their deflection program. You have to kind of pay attention to words. See, our sheriff says we're involved in a diversion program. We are. It's the county attorney's diversion program. Diversion and deflection are two different things, though. Diversion is I, the street cop, come and find you with a bindle, a little personal use narcotic. I can arrest you, put you in jail, and make you sign a contract with the county attorney and do that process. And if you complete the process the county's laid out, the deputy, counseling, this, that, the other, then we will dismiss those charges. That's diversion. City of Tucson does both, though. They have a program known as deflection. And deflection is different than diversion because the street officer now has the authority to say, with small personal use, I've seen this guy on the streets, he's got a problem. Let's get him to services, health services that can help him with that addiction. The jail doesn't do that. We need to get him into, as TPD does, CODAC. Those professional caretakers who can do things that the jail, my jail has got some great people in there, correction officers, but they're 19-year-old kids. They're not psychologists. They're not mental health experts. They're not drug addiction experts or counselors. So why wouldn't you use that? Tucson police can tell you, they've done it, it's been around for a year. Our sheriff refuses to be a part of it. They've shown over 1,000 cases in there for deflection, and they have some great success stories. Does it work every time? No. What does? But you have to keep at it, and you find ways to make and do things better. I think that's one program we should be involved in, without a doubt.
All right. We've got another question from Maureen, and she wants to know, do you think minority communities have confidence that they're being treated fairly by the sheriff's department?
No, I don't believe that. I don't, and we don't have to look very far to look at this. The Board of Supervisors, actually the current sheriff, Sheriff Napier, had said when he was running for office that he was going to have a community board that it would be picked by 2 people from every Board of Supervisors. So you have the 5 districts of the supervisor. All of the community, you'd have this community board of these 10 people who would serve under the sheriff as his community board, known as CLEPS, as the Citizens Law Enforcement Partner Coalition or Commission. It lasted for about 2 months because our sheriff got into this thing about stone garden. And Operation Stone Garden, it was a really big thing to him, and it still is today. He's still pushing for it. It's a program that was $1.4 million. That's what it was per year. And with that 1.4 million, you can buy equipment and pay overtime. To pay overtime meant your people were going to work for Border Patrol under their discretion, under their supervision. They would go and work for Border Patrol. For whatever reason, our sheriff thought this was a place to dig in and put his. This was the mountain he wanted to die on, I guess, because he stood there in front of that commission and told them, we need Stone Garden money. And the commission said, we don't believe that's the case. We don't like Stone Garden. It does impact when our deputies are tied in with ICE. We have ICE detentions at our jail, those kinds of things. It impacts our community, and it directly impacts the trust of others to be able to call you when they need help, because they look at you as a relationship with Border Patrol. I love Border Patrol, good people. I will always assist them when they need assistance, but what I won't do is their job for them. And that's what Stone Garden wants. I heard it already. Well, you had it when you were there. Why didn't you do something about it? Well, first of all, twice I met with the Homeland Security Director, Kurtikowski, and told him I don't want his money. He's not going to pay for what he's doing. In other words, you're dangling a carrot on a string saying, here, Sheriff Department, take this. If you take it and it costs you more than what it did to get it. They don't pay your employee-related expenses. So if I have to spend $1 for one employee, I'm spending another 90-some cents for all of his expenses, his retirements, his pensions, all those things, that health insurances. They weren't paying that. In fact, they were paying half of it. It wasn't to no benefit for me. So what I did with my Stone Garden money, I told them that they can give that to Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County, Tony Estrada was the sheriff down there, good man. They needed the help. They're on the border. We are not. We are impacted by it, but we're not on the border. Sheriff Tony Estrada has a very small budget, very small staffing. I saw no problems. I didn't want it. We gave it there. We bought equipment with it for our airplane that Border Patrol would use. That was it for search and investigation. Our sheriff pulled away from there and just walked away from Plexi, the committee board that he wanted designed that way. And he said the reason he did is they're anti-cops. What's amazing to me, though, is that half of that board were either cops or retired cops. So yeah, I think the stance he's got on our immigration policy is simply this. He said it on live radio last year. He has reviewed Donald Trump's positions, his policies on immigration, and he stands behind them 100%. I don't know how you can be our sheriff with that position. The policies of this administration, I don't need to tell you, they're horrific. And they're horrific to our Hispanic community. They're horrific to our migrants. We need new leadership there as well. I'm worried about Pima County, though. That's where we need new leadership too.
All right, we've got a question from Steve and Christina. And they say, Sheriff, will you budget for neighborhoods and youth programs and education instead of guns? So will you budget for neighborhoods, youth programs, and education instead of guns?
Yeah, I've been a very strong advocate when it comes to youth programs. I volunteer for Boys and Girls Clubs and youth on their own. When I was in office, all the RICO dollars I took, the only way you qualified for those is you were a program that helped our kids get through school. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth on their own, dancing in the streets, Boys and Girls Clubs. I mean, there's just so many of them. And if you were a program, a nonprofit that helped in that regard, we gave you RICO dollars to get our kids graduated, get them, drop our graduate or dropout rates, we lower those, and keep our kids moving, because they're the future of our nation. They are who we will be. And we want them to have the greatest chance moving forward. So I'm a very strong advocate for youth programs and funding those programs. Guns, I read somewhere there's 300 million people here, and there's over 330 some guns, and they're owned by like 3% of the population. When we have 20 some little ones killed at a schoolyard, Sandy Hook, and we do nothing as a nation, that's sad. That needs to change as well.
We have a question from Lillian, and Lillian asks, what are you doing to stop the pervasive racial profiling by your officers of African Americans? When will an African American man be able to drive a red Mercedes without being pulled over or stopped by officers? A friend of mine just sold his classic car because it was too dangerous for an African American man to be pulled over by jumpy police officers.
Well, racial profiling is a problem for all law enforcement agencies that they need to address and make sure that doesn't occur. We never, when I was in the office as an administrator, we had reviewed our policies. We had seen very minor complaints on these things. And so when a complaint like that comes in, you take it seriously. That's the only thing you can do. I'm not so naive to not understand and know that there is some things going on out there that we're not going to get a call on. I get it. People are worried or afraid. Does it exist in the law enforcement community? Yes. If it occurs in my command or under my watch, we would deal with it. Lamont Holt, Dr. Lamont Holt is one of our Black community leaders. He's a minister with the Interdenominational Minister Association. He called me on his program. The first law enforcement officer he thought of, not Sheriff Napier, not Chief Magnus, me, to speak to him about the George Floyd incident, about racism in our country. And he did that. I was honored that I was the first one he spoke to. But he did that because he knew me. We had built a relationship. A relationship's built on trust and friendship. This relationship started 4 years ago when I was sheriff, and he came to town and we met. He knows me, he knows my heart, and he knows what I'm about. I will always listen to anyone about a problem, and we will work together to solve it. And that's all I can do, is work with it. If we can get a community together, my mental health board, it consisted of mental health practitioners, mental health court judges, the mental health attorneys, the law enforcement leaders, so we could sit down at the table and discuss issues. I will do the same with our community boards to deal with racial issues. And have those leaders, not just the Black leaders from our gay community, leaders from our Hispanic community, leaders from anyone who feels they are being racially discriminated against or sexually discriminated.
All right, thank you. Another question from Barbara. How would you, as the sheriff, deal with the beatings of protesters by law enforcement that we've seen across the country? What is the preventive approach?
Well, first of all, you're not going to tolerate that. The best response you can do is you have to tell your team what their mission is, and they have to understand it. And the mission in that regard is two things: safeguard life, that's always number one; safeguard property. If I've been watching what's happening here with Tucson Police, I think they've done a good job. It's a tough situation. We're seeing pictures across the nation, video of that, where officers are taking a meeting with protesters. That's the attitude I would hope to get from our own department. Is one that you have to have a respect that you have to understand where they're coming from. Why are they doing this? I understand that people are saying, well, they're ruining their own cause by doing this damage and looting. That's not always the case. We've learned that it's not always the protesters doing that. The Black community leaders are coming out against them as well. we as leaders need to come out against those who tear down the strength of those who want us to protest. Protest is what's made this country great. A lot of issues have been resolved through peaceful demonstrations, and that's the key. Are protesters being peaceful? I think things will settle down, and then we'll start to see, I hope, real progress moving forward. Does it mean it'll end? Does it mean we'll never see this again? No, I don't. I'm not so naive to believe that. But we've got to make that effort every time and keep moving forward. Make progress, little steps at a time, but make that progress. Make it permanent. You can't eliminate hate and racism. We just can't. It's part of who we are. But we can certainly reduce it through education. Like I said before, racism isn't something you're born with, you're taught. So maybe that ignorance through education can be eliminated, and we can get to a better place. But you can eliminate racial bias and racial prejudices in a system, systemic, where we have it in our criminal justice system. Not just in the cops, but your prosecutors and courts. There's some terrific stories out there about the number of blacks versus whites. 26% of young black males from, I think, age 20 something to 40, 26% of those men will be in prison. Whites, 2-point-something%, less than 3%. Think of how that hurts that black family when a quarter of their men are taken away. Their dads, a quarter of the dads, a quarter of the brothers, all of them locked up for some time. That has an impact. It makes mom the sole provider of a family. It really is a struggle for this nation to sit back and say, we've got to find a way to do better when it comes to criminal justice. Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. There's a reason for it.
Okay. We have a question from Susie, and it concerns, law enforcement agencies buying all this military equipment. And she says, it seems that many large police departments have militarized their departments. What are your thoughts about using those types of weapons on civilians?
No. So there's a program known as the DMRO program. It's a militarization program with military. I think it was based with some good thoughts. I just don't think it worked. Their thinking was the military was scaling down. They had a lot of equipment that maybe law enforcement could use. We took a look at what we were getting from the military for free. And what we took was blankets and socks, thick wool socks. And I thought, wow, that's kind of strange. I get the blankets, you can put them in a patrol car, maybe you're out of scene, somebody needs a blanket. Wool socks, it was like crazy to me. Then I understood it. We have over 400 volunteers in our search and rescue department who go up into the mountaintops and do search and rescue missions. And sometimes they're stuck there for hours, could be days, searching for somebody, helping somebody out of the mountain. That's what those big thick wool socks are. So we didn't take it here in Pima County. I hope we never have. I don't know what's going on now. I will say this. You didn't, again, have to look very far. I hear Maricopa County was a few years ago. They just got rid of it. Just, I think, 2 years ago, they got rid of it. It took the new sheriff to come in and do it. Had a tank, a full-blown tank with the gun and everything. And it's like, what are you at war with somebody? We're into not militarization, we're into community policing. We're not at war with anybody. That's how I see myself, our program here in Pima County. I don't know what he was thinking of Maricopa County. Thank God that tank is coming.
Another question from Lillian. She brings up the topic of electronic monitors. And does the sheriff's department charge the person for the monitor? Because in many cities, the charges to the person are so high that they're unaffordable. What are your thoughts about charging people for?
No, we not only didn't charge them, we started this program, one of the first programs in the country, to get our work furlough guys. I remember I told you work release was a good program, but it wasn't smart law enforcement. oh, we're tough on crime. No, we want to be smart on crime. And so we use this to get them out of our facility. Our facility is a bad place. You could even do it with we have monitors that we put on for DUI. And in the middle of the day, he's sitting at home and we can tell him, all right, blow in the machine. Right on his ankle, he would have a machine to blow into and it would register within seconds. We actually had this happen. One of them was at home, he's on his monitor, and he was supposed to be clear of any alcohol use. They called in the middle of the day, had him blow, he showed alcohol. We didn't say a word. We drove to his house, picked him up, put him in jail, took him to jail. I put him in the car, took him to jail, and removed the ankle monitor. He violated the guidelines for qualifying for ankle monitor. 99% of the people, though, got it. Hey, no problem. I don't want to be in that jail. If I can come home to my family every day, I can go to work and just have my ankle monitor on me so you can see that I really am doing good, I'll do it. And that was 99% of the time. We didn't charge a penny. This program, actually, we had our officers watching it. It should be at probation. And my own belief is probation should be doing this. I get it, though. I shouldn't be just dumping jobs on people. We'll take it. We'll do it. We pay for the monitor. The monitor, $15. Putting someone in jail, $100. $85 a day per inmate. Several million can be saved.
And one last question, and then I'll ask you to sum up. A question comes from Christina and Steve, and that is, tell us about your position about the gun show on the Pima County Fairgrounds. I know that the fairgrounds, the Sheriff's Department provides security out there, but I actually attended a protest about all the unlicensed dealers selling guns without a background check. And as soon as we arrived, the protesters were told to leave. And finally, we were shunted off to an area that was barricaded off, like, far away and off to the side. But the question is, what are you going to do about illicit gun sales at the county fairgrounds?
Well, first of all, you have to understand, I was one of the first ones as a law enforcement leader to come up with a program for to recognize the need for better gun registration or background investigation to be done. People didn't realize it. The federal government had a background system that was in place known as NIMS. They still have it. That program, what would happen was they would receive information on somebody who was arrested or had suffered from mental illness, and it would go to them at NIMS, and then it would supposedly, if you were a store owner, you would check on NIMS and say, oh, Chris Nanos is a felony arrest for mental illness, so he can't have a gun. The problem was nobody was reporting to the federal government, and the federal government wouldn't tell us locally whether or not this person was a prohibited possessor, even though they had the data. The data they had came from us, and it was just crazy. So we worked with the federal government, the NIMS program, to basically say that when this data is released from the courts, we get it, the Sheriff's Department gets it, and NIMS gets it. So you had your own database here locally. If I wanted to know what was going on in, say, Flagstaff, I found somebody there who came down here and I arrested them. I had to call Flagstaff. I had to get on the phone and say, when we have computer systems and databases, that should be shared. So we fixed that. That now is a statewide database. It's silly to believe, but the FBI had their database. They weren't sharing the information, even though the information was coming from the locals. The state didn't have a database, so every local entity, TPD, PCSD, whatever, Marana, they had to keep their own. We got it fixed where it's at a state level as well. So yes, background checks are needed to be able to walk up to anywhere, whether it's county fairgrounds or anywhere, and buy a gun without a background check or the trunk of a car is wrong. There's so much more we can do when it comes to gun controls and background checks, and still respect the rights of gun owners. This is really just a hot button topic that's going to take a lot of work, not just from the sheriff, but more so from our legislators.
All right, thanks very much. We're out of time. Chris, would you please sum up why you are different from your primary opponent, and also where people can find out more information about you and how people can volunteer for your campaign if they'd like to?
Oh, we got signs coming, so I could sure use some people putting up signs, but that's a lot of hard work. We'll be fine on that. First of all, as far as Mr. Kubitsky, my opponent in the primary, Kevin is an individual who is, I liken to the Circle K clerk who thinks he can run the corporation. Kevin was a cop, 20 years, and that's it. He has no managerial experience, none. He has not, see, I can tell you what I've done to show you where I've been and show you what I'm planning to do forward. If you see my past, you'll be able to judge what my future would be, what the outcomes would be. How I worked back then would be how you can project in the future. Kevin has no past as a manager or anything. Kevin's only statement is that he was a police officer for 20 years. This is a complex job. It is a tough job that requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and those are the biggest key things I can tell you. Kevin doesn't have it. This job, you don't want somebody learning on the job, not especially given today's climate. Kevin wants to say that he wants to change everything, that change is needed. That's what we did last time. We just threw out the baby with the bathwater, and I get it. People were upset. But look at where we're at. You have a department that's, again, here today. The sheriff received a vote of no confidence from the deputies. He dismissed it as minor. He got it from the corrections officers. It was just minor. Today, he got it from his own command staff. When you have your own team telling you they've lost confidence, you need to leave. You need to step aside. Let somebody come in. Kevin wants to come in and change. He's even said he wants to clean house. That's what the last sheriff said. By cleaning house, you would go in and just throw people out. That department has a great division, and it was probably stemming from the last election. It doesn't need somebody with an attitude to get rid of my political rivals. You need somebody, and those who dissent. You need somebody who comes in and wants to unify things. And the way you do that is, the first thing you do is you call those who didn't support you. I wish everybody voted for me, but I know reality that's not going to happen. But I could call them in and talk to them and say, what can I do to prove myself? What can I do to get you to see that this is the way forward? Maybe I need to change, but you got to tell me, what does that change take? That department was brought together 50 years of hard work from the last two Democratic sheriffs. We had a Democrat sheriff, we had a Republican sheriff before who came in there and was charged, him and his chiefs, 86 felony counts. That's corruption. Because somebody takes advantage of some monies that he was supposed to be spending in this arena and spent them there. I don't know that I call that corruption. But clearly, Sheriff Dubnik came in. He's been a great leader of this organization, a great leader of the Democrat Party, and to dismiss his work for 36 years as corrupt is shameful. I'm proud of this department. I'm proud of its history. I'm proud of the people here who have worked here, those who have left. I know that it wasn't perfect, but my goodness, I've seen other agencies. I've worked in other agencies. This agency is a good agency, and it's good because it still has good people there. They just need good leadership. Someone who knows what they're doing. I don't believe Kevin's that man. I don't think Kevin has those qualities. I have them. I've done this job before. I can do it again. The employees want me back. It's just that simple. They put a billboard up. I wasn't going to come back. I didn't want to be here. I was enjoying my retirement in my life. Now I feel obligated because this is my family. 32 years I spent with them. Name a sibling you've spent 32 years with, other than my wife. No one in my family. This is my family. I want to take care of them, get them the things they need, and I want to take care of our community. And we don't do that together if I can get your support and your vote.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, Chris. We greatly appreciate it. And we're glad you were able to take all the questions. There were more questions than we had time for, uh, but
Mary, can you say this to those people who want my phone number, 465-4052, 465-4052. I take calls all the time. When I was sheriff, everywhere I went, I gave my personal cell phone out. Call me. Listen, I'll come and have coffee with you. The virus kind of gets in the way of that idea. But we'll meet, we'll talk, we'll do whatever you like. I'll gladly answer anybody's question.
super. Thanks very much. I want to encourage everybody to join Democrats of Greater Tucson. You can do that by simply going to the website of DGT, and I'm showing the website right here, right now. It's an excellent place to find out about upcoming events. Chris will be videotaping, recording your presentation, and we'll be putting that up online. And people can find that on the news section of the DGT website. So I highly commend it and recommend you take a look at it now. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And I'm going to end the call, and good luck on your campaign.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone.